Good morning. Today we're going to talk about a downstream injector. This is what it looks like when it's all put together. This is what it looks like when it's just when it's store-bought. So you can see the quick connect and the male plug is not on this yet, but we use a downstream injector just about every single day. That's what we use to draw our chemical. Chemical being the soap or the bleach, degreasers, acids. These usually last about 6 months on average, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. The longevity is determined by how much you wash it out, really. So after each use, no matter what you use, soap, bleach, degreasers, acids, it's very important to get in the habit of rinsing this out. So you use your dipstick. At the end of the day or at the end of the job, take that dipstick, put it in the water, and run it for a good, probably about 2 to 3 minutes. Make sure it's nice and washed out. With that said, when they go bad, sometimes you can get a false reading. If you are trying to pull soap or bleach or whatever it is that you're using that day and it's not working, the very first thing you want to do is you actually want to check the gun. Take the gun off of the ball valve and then try to draw your soap just from the ball valve, because sometimes the little springs in the gun get worn out from, again, the bleach and corrosion. So sometimes when you think that your downstream injector has gone bad, it's actually your gun is just needs to be replaced. So the first thing you want to do when you think you got a faulty downstream injector is check your gun. After you do that, of course, you want to check your source. You want to check the hose. Make sure you have enough of whatever you're trying to pull in the bucket, because sometimes if the suction tube is all the way at the bottom and it just doesn't have enough to draw, sometimes that'll give you a false reading that this isn't working. So check the gun, then make sure you have enough of whatever you're using in the tank to actually draw. Check the filter. If all of those things aren't panning out, then it's time to change the injector, which is really simple. So again, this is the downstream injector, but we have to plug it in to our bypass. So in order to do that, you would take this apart, and this is what it's going to look like when we're done. So we would put this on this side. So you want your female coupler on one side and then your male plug on the other. And of course you would thread it with some tape first, but for demonstrations we're not doing that. Now the male plug always goes in direction of the arrow. So I don't know that you'll be able to see this, but on the writing here on the downstream injector, because we have different size machines, you want to make sure that if you're using the 8 gallon a minute machine and the 8 gallon a minute downstream injector goes out, you want to make sure you're using the proper size. So on this reading here, this one here says a 2.35 to 8 gallons a minute. So again, we're using an 8 gallon a minute machine, so this is the proper downstream injector. But it's imperative that you make sure that when you put this back together, that the flow of the water matches the arrow here. So in this case, there's an arrow that tells you the way the flow of the water should be going. So it's right there, and I always put the male plug in direction of the water. So we do a lot of rinsing with just the ball valve and the male plug, so I always have the flow going towards the male plug. That's very important. You can have a brand new downstream injector and it won't draw chemical if this arrow is pointing the wrong direction. So for example, if we took this apart, and we actually set it up this way, again, you would want to have your tape on there, but if we try to set it up this way and the arrow is going the wrong direction, so for example, if you hook this up right but the arrow is pointing down, then you're not going to be able to draw, and you're going to be frustrated because now you think that something else is wrong, but it was just simply you have this flowing wrong. So again, really simple. Once you're done putting it together, it'll look like so. And then this is where the draw tube gets hooked up right here. Again, these last about 6 months. Really easy to change out. Don't get frustrated if it lasts a little bit less than that. It could be a bad injector, but most of the time it's because we're not flushing out at the end of the job and at the end of the day properly. So there you have it. That's how to disassemble the old Downstream injector and put a new one on.